Yeah, that clipped.
I know.
Hello guys, thank you for joining me again. My name is Kenton Park, and today we're continuing our series through Proverbs, going over chapter 3. When preparing this section, it proved to be really long, so I'm just going to be going through the first 12 verses. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 12 says, My son, do not forget my teachings, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life, and peace they will add to you. Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablets of your heart, so you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. Honor the Lord from your wealth, and from the first of your produce. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. My son, do not reject the discipline of the Lord, or loathe his reproof. For whom the Lord loves, he reproves, even as a father the son in whom he delights. So I'm breaking this part up in a header and 4 sections. The header is verses 1 and 2. My son, do not forget my teachings, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. This header introduces this concept of teachings, and then the following verses are various forms of those teachings. It starts with the words, my son. This is a father teaching his son wisdom. Now I think that everything that a father would generally teach their son can be boiled down into 3 categories. First is social etiquette, how to behave in society around you. Second is life skills, how to make a career for yourself and make money. And third is morality, how to know right and wrong. But the Hebrews in the Old Testament were commanded by Moses to teach a 4th category, and that is to know God and theology. This is throughout the Old Testament, but I'm going to the passage that most Jews consider as the most important passage, and that is called the Shema, Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting in verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. So there the command is pretty early in the Shema that you should teach your children to know God. Even Jesus said that the Shema, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might, is the first and most important commandment. So there's one of many of Moses' direct commands to teach your children about God, as well as social etiquette, life skills, and morality. But as for this passage, I'm seeing all of these in different verses of it. Starting in verses 3 and 4, we've got the social etiquette. Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good repute in the sight of both God and man. Here the author tells his son to do well with his dealings with people and treating them both with dignity and respect. Many people think that kindness means being agreeable and easy to get along with, but that's not what is thought of here. These 2 things, dealing honestly with people through compassion, builds trust with them, as well as honors God with your relationships. Verses 5 through 8 is where we get our second teaching to know God. It says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your body, and refreshment to your bones. Here the author tells his son about God, but in a specific sense of trusting in God. He says to trust more in the wisdom of God than your own understanding. And I have seen this played out a number of times in my life. Sometimes God has told me to do things that seem completely irrational, and after about a month of wrestling with him, I ended up doing it. And God used it to either bless me, teach me a lesson, or he used it to pour into somebody else. One example in my life is a time when God told me to quit a job during a time that the economy wasn't that great and unemployment was pretty high. After about a month of wrestling with him over it, and my own friends and family telling me that I should not, I ended up doing what I felt God telling me to, and after a little while, he ended up providing me a different job that actually revealed some weaknesses that I had that I needed to work on. You see, my formal job just had me working alone all the time, not being out in the community with people. My next job was out working with people, and after 4 years of working my old job, I realized that I'd become so isolated and exclusive that I had no social skills. I had to relearn how to communicate with people. It was terrifying. I had a lot of social anxiety which I had to work through, but God used that new job to grow my character. There have been other times I felt God telling me to do something that seemed too irrational, and I ended up not doing it, which sometimes led to great hurt to myself or to others around me. Trusting God despite not having all the answers is a way to live by faith. Emunah, the Hebrew word for faith, is an action, a firm action, in fact. It is about acting in things you cannot always see, trusting that someday God will work it for good. In the next section, I see life skills in verses 9 through 10. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but bear with me for a moment. Honor the Lord from your wealth, and from the first of your produce, so your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So honor the Lord with your wealth. What are our life skills? Our life skills, what we market, is what we make our money from, and this passage says to honor the Lord with that income. It uses the first fruits, which was a Jewish tradition. As fields would produce the first of their produce in harvest, the people were commanded to bring that first produce, their first fruits, and offer them to the Lord. Back then, the society functioned on more what's called a commodity-based economy, where goods were traded, practical goods with intrinsic value, and that is to say things that people could use for their life. Nowadays, our economy is run by what's called fiat money, and that is money that just has value just because society agrees that it has value. There's nothing you can do with a dollar bill, it is just paper. However, it gives you bargaining power with other people in society. Because we all agree on its value, it therefore has value, despite not having any value. And that's what the word fiat means. So be it. So if this passage uses the example of the economy of those days, commodity money, then it makes sense that it would still apply to our modern economy with fiat money. Rather than bringing produce to your church, you would bring your tithe to your church. I think this is about more than just tithe, however. It says, honor the Lord from your wealth. There are many ways that you can honor God with your wealth. Anytime you pour into somebody to help them out can be a form of honoring God with your wealth, if you're doing it with honest motives. But I think this also applies to honoring God with the work that you do that makes your money. It then offers that God will reimburse you with your investment in Him. And this is not a, you should tithe so that God will give you more money. This is more of a God sees that you're being diligent with what little He has given you, and therefore knows that you will be responsible with a little bit more that He can give you. As Jesus said in His parable of the talents, one servant was given little and was responsible with it, therefore he will be given much because he will be responsible with it as well. Another servant was not responsible with little, and therefore what little he had was taken away from him. Being diligent and responsible with what little God has given you shows that you can be diligent and responsible with more. And the last teaching in this is morality. Often morality is taught through discipline. It says, "My son, do not reject the discipline of the Lord, or loathe his reproof. For whom the Lord loves, he reproves, even as a father, the son in whom he delights." People need to be taught right and wrong, and discipline is the best way to do that. How do you know what's right? How do you know what's wrong? For children, it's very effective to discipline them. They won't be as quick to serve their own self-interest if their self-interest leads to their own harm. Similarly, God allows us to make decisions that cause harm to us. This is not to be despised. It is for correction. It is so that you can learn from your mistakes and grow. Instead, it is a sign of love that God is willing to teach you from making these mistakes so that you will be better off in the future. Ultimately, I would say that the main takeaway from this passage is to be teachable in all things. Sometimes that means being teachable by listening to people over you, be it your parents, peers, or teachers, those who are specifically given to teach you new life skills. But then also to be teachable from life experiences, like consequences of mistakes and things like that. Those who tend to mock their parents' teachings tend to make the same mistakes, whereas people who listen to them just grow wiser. Similarly, we can grow wiser from the mistakes we've made, or we can grow bitter from how life turned out, thinking that the world has something against us. Just trusting in yourself to find all the answers to life's problems isn't going to get you anywhere. Instead, there's a lot to be learned from other people. I have learned that there are lessons to be learned from observing the fool. Sometimes it's lessons of what not to do. Anyway, guys, that's all for this section, which proved to be really big, and I actually built and tore down my script so many times because I had so much to say about it. I could have gone on for a couple of hours probably with this. But anyway, that's all for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. God bless.